With 5 months left for CAT, hopefully your preparation is on way and you've already started with mocks. So you can try and use this strategy, which Vignesh and I use to get 99.9 plus percentiles and what we recommend to our students as well. So very quickly, let's look at the format that CAT 2023 is expected to be. It's expected to be a 2-hour paper with 40 minutes each for VARC, DILR and Quant. VARC, if it has the same format, we'll get 4 RCs with 4 questions each and 8 non-RC questions, which is your summary, jumbled paragraphs, and sentence insertion. DILR should also be 4 cases with 5 questions each, which was the format introduced a couple of years back. And in Quant, we'll probably get 22 single questions. Now, there is some debate, of course, as to will CAT be a 2-hour or a 3-hour paper. My personal take is it will probably continue as a 2-hour paper. Even globally, exams are being shortened a bit. And in any case, if you're prepping for a 2-hour paper, it'll be easy to switch to a 3 hours. So it's better to do that because if you have more time, you'll only end up solving more questions. So let's look at what I would recommend for your strategy for the VARC section first. Now, before you actually start the test, spend a good 5 to 10 minutes to analyze the section. The time that you're taking to analyze will reduce over time, but in the beginning, you can take a little extra time. Read the first 1 or 2 paragraphs of RCs and also read the questions. If you're using the technique that I recommend, you'll be solving direct questions in a different way and inferential questions and meaning questions in a different way. Reading the questions will help you understand how you need to approach the passage. Do you need to figure out the author's view? And is this passage going to be easy or tough for you, depending on whether you are better at direct or inferential questions? So along with reading 1 or 2 paragraphs, which is what people usually do, don't just choose it based on whether the passage is easy. Look at the questions as well. Along with that, try solving one non-RC question of each type. So solve a summary question, solve a jumbled paragraph question, and a sentence insertion question. This is because typically if the CAT exam has easier summary questions, all 3 questions will be in the easy to medium range, or they might be in the medium to hard range. So if you're solving one question each, you'll probably be able to figure out whether this question type is relatively easier in that particular mock or the actual exam or not. Once you've done this and you've formulated your strategy, start solving. Start with the RCs which are easier. In the beginning, it can be 1 to 2 RCs depending on your speed. Try to understand the RC fully and get as high an accuracy as possible. And always start with the easiest ones first. At the end, you can look to solve non-RCs. Based on how much time you have, you can prioritize the non-RCs based on which ones you found easy and which ones are your strength. You'll find your strength once you've practiced enough questions and analyzed them to figure out what's your average accuracy for the non-RC questions and what is the time taken. Again, really important. Now, a couple of different strategies that I can give here is, in case if you solved a few mocks or sectionals and you find that you are scoring lower in the first RC as opposed to the next ones which you try. In that case, it might just be that you need to take some time to warm up. And so you could take the first 10 minutes to solve the non-RCs first and then get to RCs. You can also use this strategy if your accuracy in non-RCs tends to be pretty high. Now, the other recommendation that I have is if you're not used to reading a lot or you've not prepped much, and you find that your focus is not steady for the 40 minutes. In this case, in order to take a break in between RCs, you can look to solve non-RCs in between. Here, I would definitely recommend trying out the jumbled paragraphs or the sentence insertions because summary questions would be pretty similar to RCs. So you can look to analyze the section, identify the RCs you're going to solve, and solve maybe 1 or 2 jumbled paragraphs in between each RC. So that's for VARC. Now let's look at DILR. In DILR, we'll typically get one DI question, which usually tends to be a little easier, and then the LR questions. So here again, you should look to read all the 4 cases and choose the ones which are easy for you. You're definitely not looking to finish the paper. Vignesh, for instance, has been getting a 99.9 plus percentile in DILR by finishing 3 cases. So typically, if you're finishing 1 case of 5 questions, that should be sufficient to clear the sectional percentile for most IIMs. And if you're solving 2 cases and getting all the 10 questions right, that should get you somewhere in the 95 to 98, 99 percentile itself. So find the questions which you find are easy and which you think you'll be able to solve quickly. I would typically always start with the DI case because that's something that I could quickly do and then I can move on to the LR cases. And then one important thing in DILR is if you're trying out a case, the multiple iterations, you're stuck with it, you're just not able to get to the answers, or you've got the answers but you figure out from the options that it's wrong, make sure to have the discipline to leave it if it's already been 8 to 10 minutes. You can always mark it for review, come back to it in the last 10 minutes, but get a win in the bag first. And then you'll also find that you'll be attacking this problem later with renewed focus. I always recommend using the mark for review questions for each and every section. Now coming to quant, here we have 22 singlet questions. So we can't really read all of the questions at first, but it's very important that we prioritize the questions which are easier for us, maybe the concepts that we are stronger with, and the ones which we'll be able to solve faster. So sometimes a permutation and combination question, for example, could be much quicker than, say, a geometry question where you have to calculate a fair amount, or an algebra question where you have to come up with equations and solve them. So depending on your strengths, have an idea, but it's definitely important to get to the end of the paper. So I'd recommend the 6-8-8 strategy. What do I mean by that? Now, those of you who are good at quant would have figured out that 6 plus 8 plus 8 is actually 22 questions, and that's exactly what I mean. So in the first 8 to 10 minutes, read all the questions from 1 to 6 and pick the ones which you feel you can easily and quickly solve. Now, depending on your concept level and your speed, this could be anywhere from 1 to 2 questions to perhaps even all 5 or 6 questions. But make sure to read all the 6 and solve the easier ones. In the next 12 to 15 minutes, do the same thing but with the next 8 questions. And in the next 12 to 15 minutes, again the same thing with the last 8 minutes. Now, the reason I've given you a range is because you can look to keep 5 minutes for the end. Now, while reading questions, if there's any question which you feel you can solve, but it might take a little time or you need to figure it out, or you solved it halfway, or you've made an error and you're not sticking with it, you can mark these questions for review and try these out in the last few minutes. So again, use the mark for review tab, use the entire question paper palette to your benefit, and definitely get to the end of the quant section so that you've looked at each question and found the easy ones. So hopefully this strategy helps you in all the 3 sections. Another important thing is the amount of time you spend analyzing your mock is equally or perhaps even more valuable. So once you're done with the mock, take a quick break and then try the unattempted questions. If you're trying any unattempted RCs or DLR cases, try to do it with a timer. Compare your accuracy. You might be surprised to find that you might have an unsolved case or RC where you're getting a better accuracy, or maybe the same accuracy but with shorter time, right? That's something which once you solve 5 to 7 mocks or sectionals, you start getting better and better at anticipating which cases or RCs are easier for you. Along with that, also look at the questions you've got right. At MockCat, we give a lot of analytics. You can compare your time with the average time taken for others to get it right. You can get to know the level of difficulty of the question. Use these to figure out what's actually working out for you. Which are the topics and the question types where your accuracy is good or perhaps your speed is really good. These are the ones that you should always look out for in the next tests as well. At the same time, review your errors. Silly mistakes, logical reasoning errors, these are the ones which you can look to avoid. You can also figure out, are there certain concepts which you're weak in? Did you take a really long time for a question, or were you stuck, you were not able to solve it at all? Figure out what you're weak in. That is the part which you need to brush up. Especially on the quant front, you can make use of MockCat's concept revision videos. These will not be helpful if you're just starting quant, but these are good if you just want to brush up on some of your concepts. So I'll leave the link in the description. Once you've figured what's working for you and what's not, look to brush up, perhaps try a few daily quizzes. You can try our daily quizzes which are freely available on mockcat.com, and then formulate a strategy for your next mock, which probably you'll be taking a week or 2 weeks from now. Now, it's really important that you shouldn't be looking to fix everything and sort of get a really higher score than what you're getting. Look to improve your accuracy and your marks with 1 to 2 questions. For example, if you've solved very few questions in a section, try to solve 1 to 2 more questions and get 3 to 6 marks more. If your accuracy is not great, let's say you have a lot of errors, let's say there are silly mistakes in quant, or perhaps you've just solved too many questions in RCs and got a lower accuracy, try to get a -1 to a plus 3. That is an increase of 4 marks. So look to improve by 1 to 2 questions with each mock. Think about it. Now at mock-CAT, for instance, we have 25 mocks and 45 CAT style sectionals. Even if you're starting with 0 and you're adding 1 question in each section, then you're getting to somewhere around 90 to 100 marks pretty quickly, probably in 10 to 15 mocks itself. And also use the mocks to make sure that you understand the format, you get used to the timer, you reduce your stress levels. That's extremely important. To sum up, remember, don't set any target for your first few mocks. Just try it out, get used to the format, get comfortable. Whatever scores you get in the first few mocks, use that as a baseline and look to improve slowly and steadily. Make sure to analyze your performance, reduce your errors, whether they're silly mistakes, vocabulary issues, logical reasoning errors, or you've just decided to rush and solve too many questions and your accuracy has come down. You'll not get to 100% accuracy in verbal. I've got 99.96 percentile with 57 out of 72 marks, for example. But you can definitely get to 100% accuracy in both quant and DILR if you make sure to double check your calculations a bit. Last, look at what's working for you and which section is your strong point. Plan your mock performance and your actual CAT based on your strengths. So if you're good at arithmetic, for example, make sure that you're tackling all the arithmetic questions. If you're good at numerical reasoning, again, start out with those cases in the DILR section. So I'll put the link to our free mock and daily quizzes as well as the concept revision videos for you. So all the very best to you for CAT 2023.